Welcome back to our channel, where forgotten history and hidden mysteries come alive. Tonight, we step into the haunting story of a king who built dreams from stone, yet lost everything in the shadows of betrayal. Prepare yourself, because this tale is not just about castles and crowns. It is about secrets, darkness, and a truth that power tried to erase. In 1881, a single photograph appeared that should have been erased. It shows a young Hungarian actor sitting in an ornate chair, while Bavaria's king stands beside him, oddly deferential. According to court rules, the scene was impossible. Monarchs never stood, while commoners took a seat. Protocol was law, and this image broke it like glass on a polished floor. The only rational excuse would be that the seated man was not merely an actor. Ministers who glimpsed the print knew at once that something forbidden hid behind the smile. Copies circulated through Munich like wildfire. At the court, whispers hardened into alarmed notes. Every retainer who saw the picture felt that the ground beneath them had suddenly shifted. This was no trivial breach of etiquette. It exposed 2 decades of cultivated lies and hidden arrangements. A carefully guarded private life now lay open to public eyes. The photograph became a detonator. Small decisions turned catastrophic servants, bribed letters, hunted reputations rearranged. Within months, a plot of silences and payments had begun to take shape. The end would be violent. 2 bodies were later found floating in Lake Starnberg one summer night, a discovery that turned polite gossip into a criminal mystery. A fisherman who found the corpses accepted cash and silence. He carried the secret to his grave, or so officials hoped, while file drawers quietly closed across Bavaria. You think of Ludwig II as the eccentric monarch who raised Neuschwanstein, an alpine fairy tale attracting millions. But the castle's chimneys and corridors hid more than romantic inclinations. Every turret-hidden door and private stair served a purpose, sheltering a nocturnal kingdom where the king could invert his life and live as knight's subject. By day, he followed royal duties. By night, he vanished into candlelit grottos and electric-lit halls, spaces built to keep curious eyes away from the man he truly was. In darkness, Ludwig found relief. He lived among trusted companions, staged secret entertainments, and paid handsomely for loyalty promises stronger than law, where memory could be bought and where silence was profitable. He harnessed new electric technologies to illuminate caverns, creating private theaters for midnight gatherings, futuristic comforts disguised beneath old stone and mythic ornament, and whispered rites that kept secrets alive. Loyal servants were richly rewarded to forget. Money titles, quiet relocations, any currency that erased inconvenient memory bought a perimeter of silence around the king's private hours and sealed mouths for generations. Yet concealment breeds enemies. Small resentments hardened, loose tongues connected dots. Men who took bribes found their loyalties shifting when new fortunes and threats were placed on the table. A chain of missteps and fearful choices led to a night in June 1886. Lake Starnberg became a stage where official story and whispered truth clashed beneath moonlight. On June 13th, investigators found 2 bodies floating waist-deep. One was Dr. Bernhard von Gudden, a psychiatrist of high repute, his face scratched and his neck bearing troubling marks. The other was King Ludwig II, age 40. His watch read 6:54 p.m., a small detail that would haunt the inquiry and spawn more questions than answers. Authorities declared drowning suicide, but many facts contradicted that verdict. Ludwig was an able swimmer. The lungs contained no water, and strange payments followed the discovery. The fisherman who found the bodies received ongoing payments and later became his village's mayor, a rise that suggested reward for silence rather than coincidence. To trace why a king died and a doctor was killed, we must return to Munich to the summer of 1863, when an 18-year-old Ludwig first encountered the man who would unravel him. Paul arrived as an aide-de-camp polished uniform, brass buttons the kind of presence the court admired. He looked ordinary for the palace, yet something electric passed between them. Their closeness grew fast. Secret visits at night, whispered letters folded and hidden, and a private language that meant joy for two, but danger for an entire kingdom. A preserved letter survives. "My beloved Ludwig, my heart beats only for you," it reads. Such words, tender and fierce, would later be used against them as madness. Court life watched closely. Servants listened at doors, ministers kept ledgers, and gossip traveled from gilded halls to Munich taverns. Rumors curdled into accusations fast. Queen Marie intervened. She called Paul for a private audience. No transcript exists. That night, Paul was sent away, transferred to a distant posting, never to return to Bavaria. Ludwig's first heartbreak taught him a bitter lesson. Love in his world meant exile. From then on, solitude and night became refuge, and a secret theater for forbidden affection. The king's loneliness built layers, private rituals, coded correspondence, and a nocturnal court that rivaled daytime politics in intensity and risk. Each hidden choice piled on the danger. Those who protected him often paid with careers or conscience. Others used their knowledge like currency, bargaining away silence for titles, pensions, or threatening promises. In the end, secrecy became a liability. The photograph, the letters, and the hush money map formed a ledger of guilt, and the ledger demanded payment in blood. This story is not simply about a king's eccentric tastes. It is about a kingdom's fear of truths that could topple thrones and the desperate measures taken to preserve a public image. As we move forward into this tale, expect more odd photographs, furtive letters, and midnight architecture designed for hiding people, and moments the daylight could not forgive. After Paul's sudden exile, another shift unfolded quietly. Court officials expected Ludwig to recover, but instead, his rhythms began to warp. He started skipping mornings, showing up late, and vanishing until after sunset. By winter, courtiers whispered in journals, "His Majesty has developed an aversion to daylight itself." They believed grief had consumed him. In truth, Ludwig had discovered something else in those shadowed hours. Darkness meant release. Behind closed doors at night, he could discard the mask, dutiful prince, perfect heir, future husband. When the sun fell, his disguise dissolved, and the man beneath could finally breathe. Then fate struck. In 1864, King Maximilian II died suddenly. At just 18, Ludwig ascended the throne. The crown weighed 3.5 pounds, but to him it felt like 1,000. The pressure was merciless. Beyond hiding his secret, he was now expected to marry produce heirs and safeguard a dynasty 7 centuries old. It was a task he could never fulfill. Attempts were made. In 1867, joy swept the court when Ludwig announced his engagement to Princess Sophie, sister of Austria's famous Empress Elizabeth. Beauty, intelligence, grace, she seemed the perfect queen. The wedding was set for August 25th, Ludwig's birthday. Invitations crossed Europe. Yet as the day approached, Ludwig unraveled. He postponed, then delayed again, until finally summoning Sophie to a private meeting. "I cannot do this," he confessed. "You deserve a man who can love you fully. I will never be that man." With that, the engagement shattered into silence. Remarkably, Sophie accepted. She never married later, saying, "How could I after being loved by Ludwig?" But she misunderstood. Ludwig had not loved her. His heart belonged elsewhere. That love arrived in 1866 through stable doors. Richard Hornig, a horse groom with fair hair and marble features, caught Ludwig's gaze. Unlike Paul, Hornig's low-born status seemed safe from suspicion. Ludwig promoted him quickly, groom to master of horses, then personal equerry. He granted Hornig estates by the lake, a vast salary, and something greater, unrestricted access to his private chambers. In his hidden diary, Ludwig named him Degalipa Minosilla, the beloved of my soul. Yet those pages revealed torment, passion on one line, self-condemnation, and pleas for God's mercy on the next. "I am damned," Ludwig scrawled in 1869, "but damnation with him is sweeter than salvation alone." That conflict between devotion and guilt shaped every choice the king made. Around this time, Ludwig conceived a project historians long misunderstood. He would raise a castle impossible in scale, perched on a cliff accessible only by a bridge designed to collapse in siege. He called it Neuschwanstein, New Swanstone. But unlike other fortresses, every chamber and passage was crafted not for royal business, but for secrecy, for shelter, for concealment of forbidden knights. Hidden tunnels linked bedrooms. Servants slipped through invisible doors. Even the dazzling throne room never held a throne. Its purpose was not courtly ritual, but misdirection, a theater for illusions. It was here in 1869 that Ludwig transformed fully into the Night King. Slowly, his life inverted. Meetings shifted later, dinners postponed, affairs of state delayed until darkness. By 1870, most business began after sunset. By 1875, his schedule was unrecognizable. He rose at 7:40 p.m., breakfasted at midnight, dined at dawn, and retreated to sleep at sunrise. Historians called it madness, eccentricity, the spiral of a failing mind. They were wrong. What unfolded in these hours was something they dared not write, a hidden kingdom woven in darkness. Ludwig built a parallel Bavaria, populated by those who could not survive daylight. Its citizens were chosen carefully loyal, discreet, and willing to vanish into shadows. Hornig was ever present, living practically in Ludwig's chambers. But others joined too. Actors pulled from Munich theaters. After midnight, musicians invited to play unheard symphonies, long past curfew. They performed inside Ludwig's most fantastical creation, the Venus Grotto at Linderhof Palace. An artificial cavern complete with an underground lake alive with electric light that shifted from red to blue to green. Red meant passion, blue signaled sorrow, green reflected envy. Colors painted the cave as music echoed, lovers whispered, and courtiers sworn to silence watched their king live as he could not in daylight. The grotto was no mere curiosity. It was sanctuary stage and shrine, an invented world, where shadows offered freedom. But every sanctuary breeds danger, and every shadow hides an approaching threat. The guides at Neuschwanstein will never tell you the truth. The Venus Grotto, built in 1876, was not merely an homage to Wagner's music. It was something stranger, darker, and far more dangerous. On the surface, the grotto was advertised as Ludwig's devotion to Tannhäuser, where the hero enters Venus's cavern. But this was propaganda. The grotto was in reality a controlled theater for secrets. Imagine an artificial cavern stretching 90 meters its lake, kept at exactly 28 degrees. Mechanical wave machines churned soft ripples, while hidden musicians played Wagner from behind carefully disguised rocks. At the center drifted a golden shell-shaped boat. Ludwig would recline there for hours, joined by whichever chosen companion he summoned for the night adrift, in a dreamlike realm of shadows. The grotto's lighting system was revolutionary, the first private power station in Germany, created solely for the king's pleasure. But light did more than reveal. It transformed everything it touched. Under crimson light, the cave became Venusberg, the mountain of forbidden desire. Under sapphire glow, it shifted into the Capri Grotto, where emperors once staged clandestine revelries. Each hue was another world. Most importantly, the lights could vanish instantly. A single switch plunged the cavern into complete darkness, giving Ludwig and his companions an emergency escape if unexpected visitors dared intrude. Servants chosen for this nocturnal court were vetted with care and rewarded with lavish salaries. But wealth does not always secure silence. Even the most loyal can be tempted. By 1880, troubling whispers reached the ministries. Reports claimed the king demanded unusual spectacles, late-night performances, by young male attendants, stripped of uniform, dancing only in garlands of flowers. One dismissed valet, bitter and vengeful, filed testimony describing candlelit scenes fit for decadent Rome. His Majesty commands displays that would shame Caesar himself. He wrote damning Ludwig with every word. Such accounts might have remained buried, sealed in dusty files, had not another event arrived, an event that would ignite Ludwig's downfall and lure him closer to catastrophe. In 1881, a new figure entered the stage, Joseph Kainz, a 23-year-old actor at the Munich Court Theatre. His performance in Hugo's Marion Delorme was ordinary, yet Ludwig was spellbound. That very night, the king summoned him. Most actors would have trembled before a recluse whispered to host strange desires. Kainz, however, was ambitious curious about this monarch who lived only by night. Their first encounter stretched until dawn. What was spoken remains unknown. But by the week's end, Ludwig invited Kainz to join him on a secret journey across Switzerland. Travel was arranged in disguise. Ludwig became Count von Berg Kainz, presented as his secretary. The trip was intended to remain invisible to the world, but obsession led to recklessness. In Lucerne, Ludwig committed his fatal mistake. He permitted a photographer to capture their likeness. A single portrait, innocent to outsiders, incriminating to those who knew courtly law. The photograph showed Kainz seated in a carved chair posture, casual hand resting loosely upon his knee. Ludwig stood beside him, monarch reduced to attendant. A silent betrayal etched in silver. That image passed hand to hand would strike like a knife. It revealed not only impropriety, but the existence of a secret kingdom Bavaria had long paid to keep invisible. Ludwig stands beside the actor, a monarch forced into the background while a common performer claims the seat of honor. That reversal alone was shocking, but the photograph carried a deeper wound. Look closely at their faces. The young actor meets the camera with calm assurance, lips curved in a knowing smile, almost daring anyone to question his place. Ludwig, however, is not looking at us. His gaze is fixed on the man beside him, and in his eyes there is no pretense of royalty, only the raw vulnerability of a man overcome by love. When those photographs arrived in Munich, ministers trembled. It was not merely a breach of etiquette. It was revelation. For nearly 2 decades, Ludwig's private life had been cloaked in secrecy, but now, in one careless image, his truth had been laid bare for every courtier and rival to see. Among them was Count Maximilian von Hohenstein, once Ludwig's companion, now his most bitter enemy. The Count recognized an opportunity where others saw only scandal. He began gathering evidence like a hunter tightening his net. The photograph was only the beginning. Dismissed servants were bribed to speak. Receipts for jewels, clothes, and gifts to male favorites were collected. And from the shadows came the most dangerous artifact of all stolen pages from Ludwig's own diary, revealing desires and passions his ministers could twist into accusations. But Hohenstein was cunning. He knew whispers of forbidden love would not topple a king. Bavaria, after all, was a land where nobility looked away from such matters as long as discretion was preserved. To dethrone Ludwig, he needed more than scandal. He needed madness. Enter Dr. Bernhard von Guten, Bavaria's celebrated psychiatrist, a man whose ambitions were as towering as Ludwig's castles. He had never spoken with the king, never laid eyes on him, and yet he agreed to compose a diagnosis. In March 1886, Guten delivered a report that would echo through the history. Every quirk was twisted into pathology. Ludwig's nocturnal habits were labeled dementia, his lavish operatic fantasies delusions of grandeur, his devotion to men recast as evidence of moral insanity. Without ever entering the king's presence, Guten declared him unfit to rule. But between the lines, the truth was clear. Ludwig was not insane, he was inconvenient. His debts soaring beyond 14 million marks threatened the treasury. His castles, magnificent yet draining, stood as monuments to obsession. And most dangerous of all, his secret relationships were no longer secret. The conspiracy moved swiftly. On June 10, 1886, Bavaria declared its king mad. Prince Luitpold, Ludwig's uncle, was appointed regent. Within days, a commission marched toward Neuschwanstein to seize the monarch in his own fortress. But Ludwig was not ignorant of the plot. Loyal servants bound to him by decades of silence and devotion warned him of the approaching coup. At the Austrian border, Empress Elizabeth, his cousin, and perhaps the only soul who ever understood his solitude, had arranged carriages for escape. And yet Ludwig faltered. He asked his valet with haunting calm, where would a king without a kingdom go? What life exists for Ludwig, if not Bavaria's throne? His indecision sealed his fate. At 4 in the morning on June 12th, the commission stormed Neuschwanstein. They found him not in flight, but waiting fully dressed, as though prepared for judgment. For the first time, Dr. Gudden looked upon the man he had condemned. "How can you call me insane?" Ludwig demanded, "when you have never examined me?" Gudden's answer was cold, clinical, final. "It is unnecessary. The evidence is overwhelming." Ludwig was transported to Berg Castle on Lake Starnberg. Officially, it was a retreat for his treatment. In reality, it was his cell. And though the walls were not iron, their meaning was the same. Bavaria no longer had a king. On June the 13th, less than 2 days after his imprisonment, Ludwig asked Dr. Gudden for a walk by the lake. The rain had ceased, and the storm clouds broke apart, casting the water in a ghostly silver glow. What passed between king and doctor on that shoreline would never be known. This mystery persists because many who might answer chose safety over truth. The Shadow Kingdom was disassembled, but its echoes' payments burn. Mark's sealed files keep the mystery alive. When questioned about Ludwig during an interview in 1910, the witness gave only a single haunting line. He whispered that the king was the loneliest soul he had ever known. He claimed Ludwig built castles not just of stone, but of dreams, because the real world could never hold a place for him. Reality rejected him, so he shaped another existence. And here lies the astonishing irony. Those castles of fantasy born from isolation and despair did not vanish with their maker. They remained towering monuments carved from his longing for freedom. Neuschwanstein, Linderhof. Herrenchiem say, fortresses of imagination. The same rulers who called him insane soon discovered their value. Within years of his death, they opened those dream palaces to endless streams of visitors. Neuschwanstein alone brings in over 50 million euros each year, a treasure vault disguised as stone towers. The very works mocked as madness now keep Bavaria alive with wealth. The irony burns cold. The king who lived unseen, who hid in shadow, is today one of the most photographed monarchs in all of history. His towers appear on postcards, screen souvenirs. Millions walk through his artificial grottos, climb his stairways, and marvel at his painted ceilings. Yet none of them truly see him, the man yearning only to love and be loved. To reverse time itself, Ludwig transformed night into day. He forced darkness to shine, forging fairy tales from iron and stone. He created impossible beauty because the ordinary world rejected him. The lake where he died still whispers silence. Locals speak of ghostly lights rising from the water, not torches or lamps, but pale gleams where no moonlight should fall. They claim it is Ludwig, still searching for his escape, still stretching toward the boat that never carried him away. A king forever swimming toward a kingdom of freedom. In that kingdom, kings could choose whom they loved, and night would become day. Fantasies would breathe like living things, and fairy tales would not mock him, but cradle him like truth. The Mad King is gone. Yet his legacy lingers. Every Disney castle, every Instagram snapshot, every ticket sold at the gates is a tribute to the man destroyed for being himself. Only days after his death, Empress Elizabeth of Austria recorded in her diary a chilling thought: they did not kill him for madness. They silenced him because he was free. And freedom raw and unbroken is the one force no throne, no crown, no empire can ever fully endure. Power tolerates obedience, never true liberation of the soul. Ludwig II was only 40 when death claimed him, and he spent fewer than 200 nights within those extravagant palaces. Yet in those nights, he lived truth more fiercely than others. In those stolen hours between sunset and dawn, he ruled a secret kingdom of dreams where masks were removed and courage was born. Few kings have ever dared such honesty. The waters of Lake Starnberg keep their secrets locked away. The German state still withholds files from the public as if the past itself is too dangerous to reveal. 138 years later, people still wander through his castles, still attempt to decode the man who dreamed in darkness and died beneath the cold light of history. The story of King Ludwig reminds us that truth often hides behind shadows waiting to be uncovered. If his castles still whisper across centuries, imagine how many secrets the past continues to guard. Stay with us as we explore more mysteries like this, one legend's unsolved riddles and forgotten kings. Don't forget to like this video, share it with fellow seekers of history's dark corners, and subscribe so you never miss the next hidden tale.